I wouldn't say you're super talkative.
That's because my brain is like, say 20% of what you actually want to say.
Right.
There's that in my person in my head that says, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
Actually, sometimes I do.
Not with me.
Oh.
I mean, professionally, sure. And
Yeah.
we both know you can't be full you.
I do that to you too, but sometimes I'm just talking just because it's in my head.
Yeah.
And I know what that's like. I love Victoria, but wow.
Yeah.
Not everything is, a thought that should be said aloud.
Okay. I'm saying that as the person who lives with you, I'm not like she should say 24% less of what she's. I never really have that feeling.
Say less.
Say less. Literally say less. If you could stop talking. This is what you're doing. This is what I want you to do. This is what I
need you to do.
Right. So there's none of that that's happening on my end.
Well, I think
most of the time,
for as long as we've been together, I'm also used to your ADHD-ness.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll listen and then be ADHD and then come back to listening and all of that. And it, for some reason, works.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I am just like gobbly goo. Words and words and words.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't say there's never been a time where it seems like she's going for a while. What is she?
Wait, I should be paying attention.
I should be paying attention. She's still talking. This must be important. Wait, none of this sounds.
Doesn't sound important. So wait, are you telling me that we have been in situations where you're like, man, she's really talking a lot. I should be paying attention, but it doesn't sound important.
That has genuinely happened. And I'm sorry, I guess.
If I had pearls, I'd be clutching them.
Right.
Do I sound surprised at all?
I wouldn't imagine that you would be.
No.
Welcome to the Hallspace podcast. It's about connections. I'm your host, Dr. Ritch Hall, and this is a weekly conversation about whatever and however I see to connect things. For people who want to connect, chat, and learn a thing or two about a thing or two. Without further ado, let's start the show. All right. Here we are again. What is this? Episode 5?
Episode 5. Hey there.
Yeah, welcome back, Nicole. For those of you who sat through episode 4 and was like, where's the wife, lady? Why are those two guys jammered on?
You're hanging out with Terry Huddleston.
Yes.
One of our very, very, very good friends.
Yes, friend of the show.
Your best friend. Friend of the show. Friend of our lives.
Right. Best friend, Terry Huddleston.
Leah's my favorite, his wife.
Yes.
Love her.
Who came on the show to talk, just randomly talk with me about stuff.
Yeah.
And now we're back to what most people will know as the regular format, where it's you and I, Dr. Ritch Hall, host of the Hallspace podcast, and my lovely and capable wife, Nicole Hall.
Hey there. So you guys had the Terry Huddleston experience.
Right, it's the Hall and HUD. We're calling it Hall and HUD experience.
Hall and HUD experience.
There's going to be music. It's going to get its own music.
So that was kind of like you guys' pilot, yeah?
Yeah, that was our pilot, as opposed to the pilot we've done for this show, where and it was different. I will say it was different.
Yeah.
I have a different rhythm with you than I have with him.
Yeah.
And a different way of thinking about the show. And now it's actually weird for me to be thinking about two different shows. And this is genuine in the weeds. If you've ever thought about a podcast, when you say to yourself, oh, I want to have a segment where I have a friend on, and I want to have a segment where I have this one person. I've done more shows with Nicole, and we talk to each other every day. So we've got a good language. But with Terry, it was like, oh, think about this differently. And then when you're thinking about other episodes, like, what else can we talk about? It's like, oh no, is this a Terry topic or is this a Nicole topic?
Yeah.
And so that becomes a lot of having things in my head. But since I am ADHD, I find it fun to solve the puzzle of how do you balance these different formats?
And if you think about sort of a realistic in the world example of that, it's kind of how you are with your relationships too, right? So like you guys talk all the time, and you guys have been friends forever, and you guys talk about sometimes the same things that we talk about, but in a different way. I mean, that's kind of
Yes,
the
there's always a different perspective that
right.
is, the male perspective, us as
Yeah.
nerds.
As
He makes way
husbands,
more
as
nerdy references, way deeper nerdy references than you ever will.
aghast. Than you.
Yes, than
Wow.
me. Oh my God. So there are times where he's really like, he's giving this particular drill down thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that one. Like,
Yeah.
I have to think for a second.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to me
Yeah.
naturally. Like, oh yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like in the last episode, he mentioned specifically like a Lord of the Rings group, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But I would have never been able to make that reference myself.
Right. But I get where you're.
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings isn't one I know so deeply, and even the ones I do know deeply, I will say this about being a nerd.
There's levels to this.
There's levels to nerddom, and being a young Black man who grew up in the 90s where, nerdiness wasn't as prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew things about comic books that I thought no one would ever know. It is weird that my son knows Captain America's real name, and that he knows that people know T'Challa from Black Panther. Like, that was mine and mine alone. Like, there was a time
now you
where
have to share it with the rest of us.
Right, where nerdiness was so isolating because other people just sort of thought it was weird and wrong or something. Particularly when you were a young Black kid, it was like you had to find other people like you.
Right.
And the general cultural identity that was Black wasn't necessarily associated with
nerd
these concepts at all.
Yeah.
So, it was private. And so there are parts of my personality when it comes to nerddom that I'm only just now learning can be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Often I'd be friends with white guys who were also nerds, and I'd envy them to some degree because they could wear it on their sleeve
and they could be free with it. And,
yes. I often have best friends for stages of my life. So my best friend Frank from graduate school, like he came to graduate school,
each other's doppelgangers.
Right. He came to graduate school, and in this room full of doctors and psychologists, he says, I often ask myself, what would Batman do? And I remember being internally like, I love him for saying that out loud. And two, I could never open with that. Like I could never wear that.
You felt like you couldn't do that.
Yeah. At the time, it was like, no, there were, you learn going through this life what parts of your identity are going to be palatable to people and what parts just people might not get. They might treat you weird about. I mean, a lot of that's your 20s, right? So you go there's, developmentally, as you go from being a teenager where you're learning there's a much greater world out there that doesn't believe everything your parents believe or believes different things, into your 20s where you're like, how can I fit in as best as possible so that I stand out in ways that I want to and don't stand out in ways that I don't. And so part of that journey for me was, this nerd stuff, I've got to keep this internal.
So you shaved that part off of your just public presence.
Yes, it was not part of my public presence.
I don't mean shaving it off forever. I mean, that way that you mold yourself into what you consider to be presentable.
What you consider your front
the
face.
People that you're. I mean, and you're talking about your teenage years and your 20s. You're talking predominantly about the kids at school. The high school.
Yes.
And so if you didn't have a specific tribe that was into that kind of stuff, then you just knew not to talk about it. Right. And so I get that. And I think the interesting thing about Terry and Leah too is that they are all in nerds. We love it. And so there are some things that she will talk about and I'll recognize and I'll be like, oh yeah, I recognize that. I love that. And so it's when we used to go to the conventions with them all the time. We would go through and I was telling her about some of the comic books that I was starting to get into, and Lone Wolf was one of them. And oh my goodness,
Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah. And we would go, and she's like, well, if you like this, then you're gonna love this. And it's so freeing once you find people that are number one into the same stuff that you're into. And number two, you feel free enough to be
able to share it. Because there are certain crowds, particularly where you're in the banking sector, IT, where there's a certain type of they're
nerd.
Geeks, right? So they're very technologically savvy to some degree, but they're not culturally nerdy, right? Like there are differences in the way we kind of delineate according to those groups. So they're not always comic book people. They're not always, say, Dungeons and Dragons people.
No,
we had Patty and Cam who were really into horror stuff.
Which I love those guys.
Right. Shout out to Patty and Cam.
Shout out to Patty and Cam.
They have their own show, which I'm blanking on right now. I'll shout it out later.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Right.
Patty and Cam does horror movies.
Yes.
Which I'm in love with. Okay. Love horror movies. Just a big fan of those guys.
Right.
And they're just great to hang out with.
Right.
You know.
So I think one sort of core thing in this is the need to find people that when you have these aspects of your personality, it might not be for the world. It might not be the front face that you have, but it's always good when you can connect with people who share those interests, who can help to grow those interests, that allow you to express them in ways that make you feel normal. Because, I make a Lord of the Rings reference to some coworkers in the past, and they just sort of stare at me blankly like I don't know anything about that. Now, the fact that some of these things are now in the cultural zeitgeist, like I said, the fact that Black Panther is now a thing that made $1 billion, because
it was awesome.
Because it was awesome. But now, like, if I make a reference to T'Challa or Wakanda's everywhere. And I'm on a different show, I'm going to talk about my frustrations and whatnot with how some of it has been co-opted, but now it's everywhere, so people get it. But there were so many years that I spent with it sort of as this hidden interest that, nobody wants to hear about me talk at length about T'Challa's reign and how, how he's always wanted to never let his father down and how that makes him a stronger character and figure. Or my intense feelings about Superman as a franchise and as a character, right? Nobody cares. But now there are people who genuinely, you can bring it up in random conversations, and when you're in a random conversation and people are suddenly like, "Do you see that new Marvel movie?" And it's like, I remember,
how nerdy do I get?
How nerdy can I get? I was genuinely, when the last one came out, which was Spider-Man Far From Home, I think. People would say, "Hey, you seen Spider-Man?" And I would genuinely stop and go, "How much do you want to know about how I feel about this?" Because I can go.
How far back do you?
Right. How deep are you comfortable with this conversation getting? Because for me, they went full Mysterio in that movie. I never thought, Mysterio lends himself well to cinematic adventures because he's a science fiction person, special effects. He's special effects. So when you see the movie, like no one who saw that movie was like, I didn't think they'd pull that off. But me, who'd known about the character for a long time, he's a character who's wearing a fishbowl on his head. People aren't going to get this. I was so excited they were going full Mysterio.
They totally did.
And so I was more than willing to talk about Mysterio's full history as a Spider-Man villain with people like, "Oh no, you don't get how deep they've gone here." Now, the only weird thing is that they made him tangentially connected to Tony Stark, but otherwise, they went full Mysterio. Like, they went trippy imagery, Spider-Man fighting himself. Like,
I remember you were so excited.
I was so excited at the idea that these things I had seen on paper could be transported to film. They were suddenly doing it. Like, genuinely, you do not know the glee I feel every time I see Spider-Man swing to the sky. And Spider-Man's not necessarily my character. It's my brother's character. He's, my brother is grafted Spider-Man. I'm a Superman person. Superman, Black Panther are my two favorite characters. But every time I see Spider-Man swing with momentum and a sense of weight, in my internal heart just starts to beat with glee. Anytime I see Superman fly, like, you do not know what it does to me as a person.
To your
it
soul.
Genuinely touches the 5-year-old in me and makes him squee with, like, oh my God. I believe a man can fly.
Well, I will say, speaking of Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Oh my gosh.
Spider.
The Spider-Man
Into
movie,
the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse. That's what I was thinking of. The moment where he discovers that he can swing.
Right.
Like that moment. And
they did a good job.
They did a great job.
Here's the thing, like, from a storytelling point of view, and I'm going to get all weird. From a storytelling point of view, you've seen Spider-Man swing before. You've seen Peter Parker learn to swing.
I've seen every Spider-Man movie.
Right. So you've seen Peter Parker learn to swing in three different films.
With three different characters, with three different actors.
And the fact that they, in a cartoon, could give you that same sense of, this is still an awesome thing for this young, Black kid to do.
Oh my gosh.
Speaks to how well they crafted that movie.
They crafted that movie excellently.
Right. On another episode, we could talk at length about how much we love.
We're gonna have a Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse, yes.
It means so much.
It means so much to our family.
Yes, but I think, going back to kind of what you were talking about, you and Terry connected, right, on so many different levels.
From nerddom.
Starting from nerddom, right, and then into husbandry, fatherhood, all of those kind of things. I connected with, his wife, and we just have such, a great time. But there are so many things that we know that we can chat with them about, and we're just all just weirdos together, which I love. And when it comes
it's good to have weirdo peeps.
It is. And there are some things that, we are able to speak with them about, all the different current events, right?
Yeah.
I mean, COVID is an easy one. The president, that's an easy one. You
People
guys
have
chatted
opinions.
a little bit about politics and
We
stuff
tried
like
so
that.
hard not to.
I know, but it's something that
I tried so hard not to.
you did. He had some things that he wanted, to.
Everybody has an opinion about it. It's
everybody
exhausting.
does,
Right.
and I wish I could say, we can all agree that he's, fill in the blank, but we can't.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Every time.
So moving on.
Moving on from that.
Few things that have come up this week that have been interesting to us.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we both saw the new music video. It's funny that they're doing music videos. They're all on YouTube now.
Right.
When we were kids, we had Jukebox and
Right.
MTV and all of that.
MTV Raps.
MTV Raps.
Oh God, what was the BET one?
Oh,
Rap City.
Rap City. They had
With Tigger in the basement.
Caribbean Groove. They had oh yeah. So there was actual music television where there was nothing but music videos and music playing.
And that joke, like, remember when MTV used to play video? Like, you can't even make that joke anymore.
You can't,
because the joke is so old. It is now just
no
as
one
just
will
as
know.
MTV isn't culturally relevant to us anymore.
Yeah.
The joke is now no longer culturally relevant as a result, because that was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
That's how old you are.
That's how old we are.
That's how old you are.
That's how old we are.
That's how old you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we saw the newest music video by Cardi B.
Yeah. The Cardi B video featuring Meg Thee Stallion.
Meg Thee Stallion.
The Stallion.
And we are not that old that we don't know who they are. Okay?
Right.
The 90s was our decade, but we are definitely aware of Cardi B.
It's a cultural moment in a way, right?
It is. It is a cultural moment, and sometimes we do tap into some of the newer music moments, right? Just because there's been such a buzz about it. And I remember when Cardi B was on Love and Hip Hop. So
I remember when Cardi B was on Tumblr. So Cardi B has been playing the game. Cardi B played the long game. Like, I remember when she was this annoying figure ladies loved on, like, she dropped Twitter videos and Tumblr videos, and it was always about her scamming and giving like bad advice, and she was this character that was magnetic. And then when she ascended to Love and Hip Hop, it was like, oh no, she's not going away.
No.
And then I remember like her first album, and the rumblings in Reddit and things like that of like, okay, this is not that great, or this is actually better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Because it all seemed like this is a person who just wants to be famous, and she'll take any route. So stripping.
She started as a stripper.
Yeah. Web presence. Reality TV. Like, she was just trying to ascend, and I'm not in any way crapping on that. Like, she has a personality that lends itself well to those vehicles, and now
she has been able to mold herself,
and now people think of her as just music, and it's like, no, she's literally just the person who came up through the forums. You know what I mean? She's one of those who's laying a path for herself,
right in the same way that Meg is.
Yes,
but
and Meg
she's
also, as a person who's paid some dues.
She's
to
paid
some
her
degree.
dues.
It feels like they just sort of popped just a week ago. But in reality,
that's what happens when people blow up, though. Like,
it feels like they just got here. But they've been around, and if you've been in any way connected, you might have had some awareness of them,
of who they are and all that kind of stuff. And so there are multiple opinions about it, but
it's interesting how much it's pulled out the age old, women shouldn't speak a certain way, they should have
they shouldn't dress a certain way,
decorum.
They shouldn't
And I'm not saying I'm super pro go full ratchet thought or anything,
but they do ratchet music.
But I mean, their core demographic,
it's their brand,
is their brand, right appreciates. We are not their demographic.
We are not.
And so I don't know that I appreciate it.
You were never their demographic. I am no longer their demographic.
You've aged out of their demographic?
I have.
Is it the knees? Is that what lets you know?
Oh, man. They pop when they go up the stairs, man. I can't do what Meg does. And she does it in boots, girl.
Listen.
All right?
I think she'd be getting shots or something.
Let me get my Epsom salts going. No, she's young. That's what it is.
Right. Is it youth? I forget that youth, you can just do a lot of that stuff.
Well, I mean, and we've talked about this on a couple podcasts where you don't understand the dancing.
I don't understand the dancing.
So
it's like, why the dancing? What are they doing? What is all this? The movement. I mean, it's in syncopation with the music.
It is with the yes, and
but the why?
While you are an avid music fan of many different genres,
I love genre.
You love rap just like the rest of us.
I am a 90s hip hop.
You are a 90s hip hop rap. You know, I also
occasionally love my warrior music.
Right, and I first giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. Christian woman. I love.
Why do you need to give that disclaimer, ma'am?
I feel like I need to.
Why do you need to give that? Why do you need to stop and honor God before you say what you're going to say next?
Giving honor to God.
First,
the head of my life.
She loves her some she was blasted when I got back in the house today because
Sunday choir.
That's her cleaning music.
Listen, gospel music is cleaning music. I mean, and if you've ever had an old black mama cleaning the house on Saturdays, that is the music that you need.
Yeah, it's gonna be gospel music or 90s R&B.
Yes. Oh yes.
What? Column A or column B?
Column A or column B. Sometimes a little bit of both.
Right. And Kanye, for all his mistakes, did bless you with the Sunday service choir.
Let me also say this. We're gonna need a sound for when I tangent.
When you tangent, I still haven't decided what the tangent sound is. It should be like a
maybe like a record scratch or something like. Okay. Don't like Kanye. Okay. Oh, he's a big baby. He's had multiple tantrums. Somebody sit that boy down somewhere. Okay.
Poor Mr. West.
Listen, and I say this too. I will say it every time. He lost his mother. He has never been the same. Okay.
Trauma does a lot to people.
It does a lot to people, especially when you don't want to deal with it.
Especially narcissists.
Lost his mama, and he's a narcissist, and he's crazy.
But we need narcissists. Narcissists are often genius.
That being said, he's a big old baby, but he is a musical genius. And Sunday service choir is all of the things. Okay.
It is a good album.
It is the reason I use Amazon Music. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that album. I'm sure you could look up the stats and see that I play it a lot.
Amazon does not give you the stats. It's one thing I hate about them. It's one thing I miss about Zune. Ladies and gentlemen, I had a Zune. I was surely in the Zune camp.
Halt.
Yeah, you want to stop here?
I would like to also stop and say we need... When I was younger,
right,
I had a Zune. We all had. Richie bought everybody a Zune
because they were trying to get rid of them, and they were selling them for $50. And it was a device that could hold 32 gigs of music for $50 10 years ago.
Another
so I was like, everyone's getting a Zune. This is the most incredible piece of hardware, and it failed. Like within 2 years,
it did.
They were slowly dismantling the infrastructure.
Here's the sad thing, Richie.
What?
You got us all Zunes after it was popular, like it was done.
No, it was on its way out.
It was on its way out. We weren't even on the cusp of its creation. No. But it was a great device
for what it could do. It was a brick that held 32 gigs worth of music. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it worked for a very long time until one day they just stopped working.
It took updates way better than iPod ever does.
Right.
Can you tell I'm not a fan of
iPods?
Apple,
yeah. You want to circle back around to Cardi B?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So no, I love the Lord. I love gospel music. But also the guilty pleasure in me loves ratchet music. Loves it. It is a
God's
guilty.
watching you when you're listening to the ratchet music
too. I gotta pray and anoint myself.
Hey.
Listen, but so 20-year-old Nicole was like, suppose in this house, what? I can't percolate anymore. I can't.
You get down, but you can't get back up.
And it don't even look the same now. You would see me like, what are you even doing down there? It doesn't even look like the percolator at this point.
Right.
It looks like a 42-year-old woman trying to pop, lock, and drop it.
Right. Trying to relive her glory days.
It's not working. But I mean, Meg and Cardi B are they're doing their thing. Do I want my daughter to listen to it? Absolutely not.
Oh, look at that.
Hypocrite. Okay. I understand that. But in my day, it was like Little Kim.
Right.
Knew all the words.
Foxy Brown,
not a fan.
Right.
But
yeah. You chose a side.
I did. I just preferred Little Kim. Nicki Minaj with her first mixtapes. What?
Oh, yeah. I remember you were a fan of those.
I'm a big fan.
You loved you some Luke.
Oh, what?
Yeah. 95 South? Was it 95 South?
95 South.
Right?
Tootsie, like all of that.
Yeah.
I loved
Tootsie Roll.
all of that.
Tootsie Roll.
And I know that people are up in arms and that the song is called WAP. If you need to know what it means, you're going to have to look it up.
Said we cannot say the title.
We are not going to say what it means. You guys got to go look it up.
We would lose our family-friendly rating.
Listen.
The fact that we're talking about it at length. Probably.
First giving honor to God. We're not advocating the discussion of, nasty things necessarily, but the name of the song is WAP, and it is very...
It's worship and praise. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Right. That is... It is worship and praising what you... Yeah. So, yes. But it's no graphic. It's no more graphic than the stuff we listened to when we were younger. I didn't expect, when I heard the outcry, like there were so many people that loved it and then there were so many people that were upset about it. I got both sides of it. You like what you like, right? And you gave a perfect description of what you thought about it. Like, there's a box where I put music that I don't really listen to, and this is probably that kind of music that I don't really listen to. Right. You don't love it, you don't hate it. You just you're not their target.
One thing I will say, growing up, I remember distinctly, it was the Hot Boys album. Was that Lil Wayne and what's the other guy?
Manny Fresh.
Yes.
Baby.
And what's the leader, the guy whose song it was? It's escaping me right now.
You're talking about Baby.
Juvenile.
Right? Juvenile. Oh, yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically that was the moment where I realized, oh, hip hop's gonna move on without me. And I'm not going with it.
I'm gonna sit back here with Tupac.
I'm gonna stay back here with Tupac and Common and Black Thought and
De La Soul.
We're just gonna chill here. We're just gonna chill here.
Listen, 90s is your decade.
90s is my decade. It's my jam. Right. I mean, and there are some artists who have grown up with me, and I've continued to love their projects. I'm going to do a whole show on Fonte Coleman at some point.
He's fantastic.
Because that is the music of my
He's brilliant.
Life. Yes.
He's brilliant, and he does speak to your current.
Yes, he has always spoken to my current, because we're both like
growing together.
Yeah, we've both grown up together, and that he has been the soundtrack since I discovered him in my late 20s. It's like, okay, this dude he's boom bap with me when I'm boom bap. Yep. When I'm now chilled a little bit and doing some chill things. He's foreign exchange. He's, the month of June. And then he comes back with some, May the Lord Watch. And I'm like, okay, I'm still with you. I'm still rocking with you. So I know there is what I like, and the world does not have to like that. As we've said before in the comic book conversation, I know what I like, and I'm fine loving it more than anyone else has to love it. You can come to me and say, Fonte sucks, Little Brother sucks.
But you're still going to like what you like.
Right. Yeah. My brother never has loved Common. My brother feels like Common is the worst rapper ever.
I know.
And I loved him. Like, my early 20s I love that dude. His first 3 albums were, once again, soundtrack of, I was driving through Chicago every summer, going to comic book conventions, listening to Common in the car. So I'd be, rolling around Chicago.
Like Water for Chocolate is classic.
Like Water for Chocolate is a classic. I own it on vinyl. I remember my cousin Herbie, the first time I heard it, we were in New Jersey visiting him, and we're in an SUV, and he puts that album in, and he is literally like 100 miles an hour down the highway bumping this album, like heavy bass. Me and my best friend Lewis were in the car, and I'm falling in love with this album while also afraid for my life because he is driving so outlandishly fast.
There's no better way to discover your favorite artist than to be in your car or someone else's car with it turned
all the way up, like rattling in your chest bass.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, this album is amazing. Who is this? When I got home, I bought the CD immediately. Like, I had to wait till I got all the way back to Cincinnati to purchase that CD. But like that summer, I learned about, that was when I knew Common from a couple of things. She was the who I'm talking about, y'all, is hip hop. It's hip hop. That I knew that guy, but like Water for Chocolate was like, oh, I think I love this dude. Like, he's my music.
Yes.
I can't say I've loved all the stuff he's done lately. Oh, and we should probably talk about Common. This is a weird segue,
ahead,
but
Tiffany Haddish.
Well, okay, we'll talk about the highs and the lows.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah. It was
a
on the
good
list.
segue. It is definitely on the
So
list.
yeah, Common seems to be dating Tiffany Haddish, which, kudos to her.
Well, she spoke out about it, and then I don't know if you've seen, it's just recently said
I did not see.
he did. He came out and he got interviewed, and they said, "Oh, we're just so happy for you. We're a big fan of Tiffany Haddish, and you guys are together, and that's so great." And he said, "Yes, I care for her a lot.
Oh, 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 oh.
I am glad she is in my life. I care for her a lot."
Oh. And what most people won't notice, if you're not like fans of Common and or Tiffany Haddish and follow them on social media, they've been together a lot. So
yes,
he cannot deny that there might be a relationship there.
He cannot deny. But as a woman,
you heard it differently. You heard he ain't claimer.
That's exactly what I heard. Right. And I mean,
which is rude.
You care for me?
Mad rude.
Oh, you care for me?
Mad rude.
You care for me like you care for your boys?
I mean, I love everyone. All lives matter.
That is an all lives matter statement. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get super pumped up here.
Hey, why not?
I'm not gonna try to get too far into my Cincinnati twang, but
you're among family.
You not gonna all lives matter me.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh.
Because if you listen to what he said, he's like, "Oh, I care for her a lot." And he's swiping, she's like, "Yeah, we doing it."
Tiffany Haddish is a little messy social media.
I mean, she speaks her truth. She says what she says, and she makes no apologies.
She is not exactly like, it's weird. Like, she's kind of savvy, but she's also, she got in the back door. Kind of.
She did. And, I mean, some of it was probably due to her personality, right?
Yeah.
But
she's a comedian.
She shaves off less than the rest of us, maybe.
Yes, less than a lot of people.
And she got as far as she did, and she feels like she doesn't have to. And kudos to her. She speaks her truth, and she sees it, she says it. And they asked her about Common, and she's like, "Yeah." I mean, because
so Common's having a banner week with that, but Common has also had some accusations.
Yeah.
But we have to take a break. So when we come back, we'll talk about Common's accusations and what's going on there.
All right. See you soon.
Yeah.
I'm on my way home. I'm on my way home.
All right.
And we're back.
So we were going to talk about Common.
Yes.
And what's recently happened with Common.
Once
again, the rapper, formerly known as Common Sense, has found himself in a little bit of hot water outside of recently disclosing that he might be in a relationship with Tiffany Haddish.
May or may not be.
I mean, she's saying, yeah, he's saying, I care about you, which is not what any woman wants to hear. So Jaguar Wright, a Philadelphia singer who has toured with The Roots, Jimmy Fallon's backup band, had some accusations that she made via Instagram. It seems like recently, like within the last week, and has a lot of things she's been saying about The Roots. She said that they are fake. She said some stuff about Erykah Badu being jealous of her, being angry with Jill Scott for, she says, pretty much taking her entire style. And also some things against Talib Kweli, maybe doing or saying perverted things back in the day when they were touring together. And then the most, bombastic claim is that she might have been sexually assaulted by the rapper Common while on tour.
Let's say on a tour bus, yeah.
On a tour, something involving tour.
Right.
She says that it was a very, rambunctious atmosphere, and that she would often sleep in her clothes, so that guys didn't try to mess with her, and that at one point he might have attempted to, put himself somewhere where without her permission, without what we now call the need for enthusiastic consent, right? So she was asleep.
What's that called? Enthusiastic
consent. So one of the things that we teach young college students, because very often young college students find themselves in trouble for being alleged to have assaulted someone, because they do a variety of things that are squarely in the wrong category, like touching people who have not given you any permission to touch them.
Not
so women
respecting personal space.
Right. Women have a lot of stories about being groped into clubs and while walking stalking and things like that touched by gentlemen that they have not gotten permission to do.
Yep.
So that, square in the wrong category. There's also, allegations that are made when someone essentially, tries to get someone to sleep with them and persists, even though the person has said no, has intimated no, is not saying yes in a clear way, but they keep making the attempts, trying to take off clothes and things like that, also falls under this squarely. That's a no category.
Right.
And then there is the, bad sexual advances, and bad makes it sound like I'm making a value judgment, but in reality, it's like a guy shoots his shot and it doesn't work.
Right.
And once again, not taking anything away from that, because that can also be assault. That's making an overture at someone and they decline, and once again persisting.
Even after they've declined.
Right. Pushing yourself on someone even gently. Can be considered a type of assault. And the fact that this is society has changed in a lot of ways in the last 20 years, where in the past, shooting your shot at someone wouldn't have been considered necessarily criminal in any way. It was, you just learned a lesson. Hopefully you did what you were supposed to do. And this idea that rape and sexual assault were looked at as different things. And that rape was when you forced yourself on someone sexually.
And committed a full act.
Right. And that wasn't to say that was always like, there were definitions in books where, hey, this other stuff is also considered assault and bad.
Right.
But society wasn't necessarily listening to women at the time.
Right.
And with the Me Too movement and some of the changes recently, there have definitely been a shift to where it's like, hey, there's a lot more things on the table as inappropriate behaviors. And that responsibility isn't just on women to report it, but also on men to teach their sons not to commit these acts, and that, women have autonomy and agency, and that they should be allowed to, walk down the street and not be catcalled, or not be forced into alleys, or you know what I mean, and society has pushed back a lot at, particularly male society, patriarchy has pushed back a lot at, what do we allow, and how dare you, now I can't say a woman is attractive when I see her on the street. Why is that wrong? And so in that long explanation of, what is sexual assault and what isn't, and once again, that's a Cliff Notes version of that. There's a lot more literature on it, and a lot more people who could speak to it way more plainly and better than I can. Common may have assaulted this woman in his 20s. She's just now revealing it to the world. This guy is a sex symbol. He's made all these videos and rap songs about being this sort of, lover and respecter of women and things like that. And now that's being called into question. And sort of, what do you do with that when, like, by myself, I'm a lifelong fan of this guy, and
now you're kind of like, should I be?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's interesting in it is he also admits to having been sexually assaulted, right?
Yes, he did. And he was writing about it
in his book. Which I haven't read.
I haven't either, but he did talk about being molested.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you see that perpetuated, right? So the behavior we
call it the cycle of abuse.
Right. So
abuse
it's happened
people
to you,
often
and so
abuse
sometimes,
others. Right.
Right. And often it's something that they don't even know that they're perpetuating.
Right.
Or they're just doing what
they're often
was
not
done
necessarily
to them.
sensitive.
Right.
And people often think, well, just if something happened to you, if you know what the trauma is like, you should never impart it upon others. But the opposite more often ends up being true.
Right.
That
you just do
trauma warps people in a way that they might traumatize other people because they haven't addressed their thoughts and feelings. And as we said, he just recently addressed his own
He absolutely just recently discussed his trauma.
And sought treatment for it.
He did. He had a couple of interviews where he was able to finally discuss it, which is hard for African American men.
Yes,
right?
very.
It is hard for men in general to say that they have been sexually assaulted, molested, etc. And so he was able to finally, say something about it. But it's kind of like you said, that was his normal.
Yeah.
When he was younger, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe you get into your 20s, which is not that far from, your teens, I don't know what age range it happened, but
he was pretty young in the game.
He was pretty young in the game.
He was in his 20s when he kind of rose to stardom.
He probably just did what he thought was
right.
considered normal.
Right.
Behavior.
I mean, what's
And
interesting when you think about it is the
it.
tour bus environment. We often have sort of in our minds, we think of those as kind of
wild,
crazy, you know,
everybody's
people sexing
doing
each other.
all the things.
Yeah, a lot of drugs and alcohol and things that sort of lend itself to irresponsible behavior and things that
20s.
in the light of the 40s, you'll think, oh my God, I can't believe I did those things.
Yeah.
Those were wild nights, but it's definitely moments for boundary crossing.
Definitely.
Or across the spectrum.
Yes. I think that there is something to be said for decision making in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for, you know, how you were raised, whatever happened to you, and then, you know, going out into the world that way.
Right.
And interacting with other humans, basically.
Right.
A lot of the things that, you know, our kids are, again, 10, 8, and 5. And one of the things that we're constantly teaching is respect of people's personal space.
Yeah.
Because Victoria doesn't care.
Does not care. She wants
at all.
If she wants to hug you, she's hugging you.
She's gonna hug you. She wants to get in your lap. Yeah,
she's getting bigger for that. It's like
when she was 2, was like, look at you, little person, you come and hug in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
But now she's 5, almost 6,
and way bigger in stature.
Huge. It hurts when she just jumps in your lap.
Right.
You know, and so some of it is just practicality, and some of it is just you're gonna be in kindergarten.
Yeah,
you can't just jump in people's laps. You can't.
I mean, there's something to be said for what is a child. Trying to learn that agency and sexual independence.
Right.
And then there is adults.
Right.
So that can't be ignored in this conversation.
Right.
But that, you know, once again, I work with 20-year-olds. They make a lot of
College
mistakes.
Students make all kinds.
We don't necessarily want these mistakes to follow them for the rest of their lives, but I do believe there should be consequences. Things should be learned. And that there is an opportunity for someone to essentially atone for. So when it comes to Common, I hope I don't believe he's released a statement of any kind about these accusations.
Something,
but he should address these accusations.
Absolutely,
and be contrite.
And exactly, if nothing else,
mm-hmm.
he needs to apologize for anything that she felt he had done wrong. Right, because her experience was her reality. Right.
And that as men, we do often have a certain responsibility to, to ensure not that cross people's boundaries.
Exactly.
And we don't always know what they are. And that's why we talk about enthusiastic consent. So someone can't just say, yeah, I'm kind of okay with sleeping with you. It's got to be like, yes, I absolutely want to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm totally in.
You have to be 100% sure. You have to be coherent enough.
Right.
You have to be in your right mind and body to say it.
Right. Which is why you shouldn't be under the influence of any substances.
You can't be drunk behind a dumpster.
Right. Those stories exist.
Consent. They do.
Right. And very often, and this is not in any way an excuse. Once again, in those environments, in those what we think of as rock star environments, it's like everybody's on stuff and they're doing things. And so as a society, we often sort of are permissive of, well, if something happened, it's because these people are engaging in it. And very much our ideas around groupie culture, we often sort of, that we have unspoken, stuff happens when you're there.
Right. And so you think about this up and coming rapper, he's handsome, right? He's on this tour bus. He doesn't have to get anybody to say yes. I mean, everybody just wants to be with him.
That's the
assumptions that people make, and so oftentimes there's backlash for the person who has decided to speak up.
Right.
And so
and Jaguar Wright has gotten a lot of online backlash from a lot of people, Black Twitter. Here's the thing. I'm going to take a minute to talk about Black Twitter. I absolutely love Black Twitter when they're being, Black and, just enhancing Blackness.
Yeah.
One thing that I think people forget about Twitter, and once again, this is where my autism helps me out a little bit. My kind of autism. I have not been diagnosed, but you talk to me long enough or live with me. It's not a surprise to some people who know me. So the thing about Black Twitter is everyone has an opinion.
Right.
And that's life, right? And one of the things that we as humans have not evolved past yet is just because someone has an opinion that might disagree with yours doesn't mean that it's worth anything more than a grain of salt, right? And so very often one of the things that people get caught up in Twitter, and I remember when Twitter was first becoming this thing, they would report on the news and they'd be like, 5 people disagree with this thing that we reported yesterday. And it'd be like, why do those 5 people matter other than you found a dissenting opinion? The human brain loves negativity. What's interesting about negative comments and statements and criticisms is one criticism can wipe out 10 compliments. Right? That's just a human thing. So any one time one person says something negative, you will focus on the one negative thing the person said. And if 10 other people walked by you and said you were the most beautiful, handsome, attractive person in the world, that one person's I don't like that dress is going to make you go into this very dark place, right? And so I say all that to say, when it comes to Twitter, we get so caught up in this volume of information and think just because people dissent in their opinion that it matters.
That means something.
And you just cannot live your life that way. And so it's and it becomes very hard when, you know, sometimes Black Twitter will pile on and will be very insensitive to the fact that these are still people involved in this, and it becomes more theater. And that's when I'm like, oh, guys, we should
pull back a little bit here.
We have to pull back, right? And I'm even like that. Like, you know, Nicole has her very strong feelings about Kanye. I feel like I kind of understand that type of personality for a variety of reasons, and so I can't hate the dude. I see what his problems are. Do I support him in everything? Absolutely not. But do I hate him? Like, for me, it's hard to rise to the level of hate. There are a few people I hate. Tucker Carlson is a person I hate. Ben
you
Shapiro,
do have a list.
I hate.
What's that girl's name?
Candace Owens.
Yeah,
I don't hate Candace Owens. I feel sorry for her, just like because within me is that, oh, you're a Black person who's going to get your wake up call, and I just hope it isn't too bad. Like Clarence Thomas, I don't hate the guy, but like, and often I reserve for certain Black figures a certain amount of, oh, this is more sad than it is. I mean, and even if they're vitriolic in their approach, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad for you. Just because I tend to want to see Black people win, and when someone is anti-Black in their,
but they don't want to see Black people win.
They don't know how white supremacist they are in their heads, or they're lying. So it's like, if you're completely disingenuous about it, and you really do know, then I'm like, oh, okay,
that's even worse.
Screw you. But like, if you seem convicted in this way that, oh, you just haven't learned the lessons yet that you need, then I'm like, oh, all right. I don't hate you for being ignorant, because it's hard for me. I give the benefit of ignorance to a lot of people, which is why I have to do what I do, right? Like, a lot of people can't do their job. So, you know, so many people in Black Twitter want to just cancel a person outright. And I don't believe that cancel culture is really a thing for the most part, unless, to me, cancel culture only is a problem if people are physically dying and or committing suicide. Just losing your cultural cachet for a while, it hasn't turned out for many people to be.
So are they trying to cancel Common?
Some people have already canceled him. You know, some people are still sort of having the argument. There are people who, like myself, who've loved his career and now are struggling with some, what do I do with this feeling of ambiguity?
What do you do with this information now?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm of the mind of, I give the guy the chance to be contrite, to express his guilt and or address the situation, apologize in some way, because it's likely that even if he doesn't think what he did was wrong at the time, there might have been something he did wrong
that crossed the line for her.
Yes. And so, and you know, as a person who we talked about this offline, and I'll just say it briefly. In your 20s, navigating relationships, there are many things I could look back on and be like, oh, I was maybe manipulative at that point, or I was trying to get the wrong thing at that point, or expressing myself in a way that was hurtful to a person. And I'm sorry for those things now. I can apologize as much as I can, but they are also sort of trapped in amber. They are in the past. And if a person comes to me and says that I did something horrible back then I have to deal with it. And acknowledge their point of view, essentially, is what I'm saying. Whereas I might not have thought that I was being horrible, and looking at it through the lens of 20 years, I'm like, ugh, yeah, that looks a little sketchy.
Yeah.
But so few of us are without any sin that we can consider ourselves above it, and that we shouldn't be apologetic if we've wronged another person.
Yeah, a lot of it is just about accepting the perspective of the other person.
Right.
Especially when it comes to something so sensitive as physical contact.
Right.
You never know what things trigger another person.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about physical contact and things of that nature. And for whatever the situation was, she felt wronged, and she still feels like whatever happened was wrong, and she was brave enough to speak her truth.
Right.
Even though, you know, Black Twitter will get you. You know,
yeah.
the internets and these
It's
internet.
quick.
Oh yeah. The stuff
It moves
happens
very
fast.
which means that, we're talking about the story. Some people might not have heard about the story, or the story might have gone away within a year. Because to be honest, from like a perspective of, hey, Cardi B and
Meg Thee Stallion
are dropping an album, that's a much higher on the cultural radar than this to those of us in the 90s who valued this person.
Right.
And you hope that bad things don't come from.
I hope that
like
they can.
There could be an opportunity for growth.
It could be an opportunity for growth, and
particularly
maybe
for a conversation in the Black community about some of these things around sexual agency and how are you respectful of a
people's personal space,
and,
respective of their experience of you.
Right.
Because there are so many things. I mean, quite honestly, in our 20s that you did, that I did, that we did as college students that could be considered egregious, wrong, bad.
I am not above judgment.
No,
It'd be very hard for me to say I'm above judgment.
Not at all. Yeah, no. I mean, there were tons of mistakes that we made, and if someone came to me and said, "Man, you were really," depending on what it was, you have the opportunity then to say, at the very least, I acknowledge your experience of that.
And maybe I am sorry. And what's interesting in our litigious society, it's so hard for people to say sorry, or I am sorry that I did that. I'm sorry that to apologize appropriately.
Yeah, that was never my intention. Yeah.
Like people avoid apologizing in our society.
Yes.
Because they're afraid of consequences and I don't like that about where we currently are, particularly for people, at the top who can't stop and go, oh, you know what? I might have done something wrong.
I made him,
and that might have had consequences for people.
I ignored this whole COVID thing and now look at it.
Right. And I feel like, people get, once they get a little blood in the water on that, they're like, they suddenly get themselves sort of ginned up to, no, let's tear things down. Let's ruin everything. And it's like, well, let's calm down. We still need to let cooler heads prevail to really solve a problem. Because I'm not for necessarily like mobs. Because, for Black people, historically, mobs have been a bad thing. But also, I don't believe that everything is a mob. So that's a much deeper conversation.
That's a whole nother perspective.
What I'm really saying is, let's give people time to learn from their mistakes, to make the apologies they need to make.
And give them the ability to atone.
Yeah. And if they do that, then I will clean the slate.
Listen, if you atone and you have said, since then I've never
genuine sincerity,
listen, remorse and change of behavior
goes a long way.
Goes a very, very long way.
Right.
Especially with things so incredibly sensitive. And so I think that will make a big difference in,
So it's interesting. This isn't a benefit of the doubt situation. Like, okay, she said this thing happened. From everything she said, it's likely that something happened and that is very close to what really happened. Yeah. And that I think he should probably apologize. And figure out ways to make up this, particularly as a man with a daughter. Like, you have to really sort of stop and go, oh, wow, maybe I was a POS in my 20s.
If whatever happened in your 20s happened to your daughter, how would you feel? Right.
Yeah.
That's
the guy who said I went from bashful to international to asshole should stop and say, yeah, okay. So in that phase, I might have hurt some people.
Right. And she still feels a way about it. Mm-hmm. And she should.
Like, hey, that's wrong.
I mean, I don't know how many years ago it was, but whatever it is, it's still sitting in her.
Right. And you don't want to leave that pain out in the world because it comes back on you.
You do not.
Not just because he has a daughter, but as a man with a daughter, like, hey, your daughter's running around with dudes like you out in the world who are going to break their hearts.
Yeah.
So you do have to be thoughtful.
Yeah. But I mean, Common is one of your favorite rappers. Mm-hmm. Again, we were talking about 90s being your decade, right?
Yes.
I'm going to say our decade because we loved the music of that time.
Right.
And speaking of music of that time.
Good segue.
There is
a web series,
a
live series.
DJ Cassidy is doing what's called Pass the Mic.
Right.
And the shout out to Stephanie. She posted, and I saw it was it started out with Kid and Play.
Mm-hmm.
Just a side note, yes, Play was like my first crush ever in life.
Yeah, okay.
Just don't sigh like that.
Okay, I'm just saying, shout out to Play of Kid and Play.
Hey, Christopher Smith. Hey there. Yeah. So anyway, they started out with Kid and Play, rolling with Kid and Play, and then it went into Peppa and Salt with Shoop, and then it went into Naughty by Nature, Hip Hop Hooray Ho, which that's all in our decade.
Yeah, square in some music that we enjoy.
Square in what we grew
Pulls
up
some
with.
Nostalgia.
It pulled all of the nostalgia.
Right.
I mean, you know, we started out with the Meg and the Cardi B, and like that's the jam. And
for today,
for those. If there are younger folks listening who don't know, it's some hoes in this house. Like that song that's like, I'm from Cincinnati, golden skates on a Saturday night.
Oh God, take it back.
Oh, golden skates on a Saturday night, party, dancing. Like that is all the things. And as we discussed earlier, I love that ratchet stuff, but I also love good hip hop. Right?
Good 90s hip hop.
Good 90s hip hop. Right now, in my repertoire is the Outkast albums. We have vinyl.
Blasting them out. I got her the vinyls for her birthday.
Oh my gosh. So when we first started dating, it was the cutest thing. Big, huge Outkast fan, right? Nobody can touch Andre and Big Boy, all right? And when their music came out, every time they made a new CD, I would come home and he'd have, you know, their newest CD. Like he'd buy it for me because I was going to buy it one way or another, but he would buy it for me. It was like the most beautiful. Like,
she hasn't actually had to buy music for herself in 20 years.
I haven't since we started dating.
Something that I don't know about what she likes. Like occasionally her gospel. Like I don't know.
You never know with my gospel, but with anything Earth, Wind and Fire, anything Outkast, like any of my music, you know, Richie, he pays attention. He knows what I like, and so he's got a really great record player, and so he put one down on our first floor as well. And right now, I'm just living in Outkast.
The first three records of the
Southern
Outkast
playlistic catalog music. I'm on Aquemini right now.
You're gonna go back to Atlians.
I'm gonna go back to Atlians.
We don't have Speaker Box to Love Below yet, but we'll get it.
Yeah, I bet you that's gonna be like 6 records with the A and a B side, probably.
At least 4.
Yes, but so what are you listening to right now that's new? Because I know you're a big fan. I know you've got we're both De La Soul, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Common fans, Black Thought, The Roots. Like we love everything.
Those are my pantheon.
Those are like if you're talking about a trip to West Virginia, 3 hours, 4 hours. These
if you're talking about a trip to Florida, a 12-hour drive.
Absolutely.
And those are the albums that are definitely getting played.
Yep.
Along with once again Fonte's catalog.
Foreign Exchanges. Yeah.
The Foreign Exchange catalog.
Love Foreign Exchange. We saw them in concert.
In my current playlist is the new CeeLo album. CeeLo is also another person who's actually gotten himself in some trouble for some possible sexual assault a number of years ago.
Yeah, he's had a little bit of trouble.
Apologized, dealt with it legally and things like that. So I think he's on the other side of it. Good for him. So his new album, I love it to death.
CeeLo started out in Goody Mob.
He did. He's a very folksy, bluesy album.
He is.
I loved the new John Legend album, so I've listened to that over and over again.
John Legend has been pretty consistent.
He has.
I will say. I love his earlier music better.
First 3 albums, yes.
Yes, first 3 albums,
Yeah. And so I love this new one, and I've been enjoying it. And also Leon LaHavis dropped a new album. I love that album.
Get into her, man.
Bittersweet is just an amazing song. Leon LaHavis' album is called Leon LaHavis. And
she's
love
a great
that
artist.
album.
Yeah.
And then Alina Baraz, who I just discovered, I'm now in love with that. I just bought her vinyls. I'm waiting on those to get to the house so I can listen to those. And usually I don't buy a vinyl unless I love the whole album.
Right.
So there's many albums where I'm like, I like 1 or 2 songs here. You know, in the digital age, you can like some of it.
You can skip songs.
Skip a lot of songs.
Or you could create a playlist. But with albums, you start it and it goes.
Right. So, and then, you know, my standbys currently within the last year, like Daniel Caesar. I fell in love with him and he dropped an album.
I feel like Daniel Caesar is going to be classic. I feel like his music is just it'll follow us. So there's some things that, you know, we started out with the 90s and we left them kind of in the 90s. I don't have a loop playlist anymore, but it doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means that it's not in my, you know, greatest hits, right? And so there are some things that you grasp onto, like I am a big fan. There's a couple of new rappers like Lupe Fiasco.
No, he's not new anymore.
He's not new anymore?
You're old.
Am I old?
Yeah, he's like over a decade. Like 15 years ago, I think.
I was going to say, I love all his stuff.
That's how old you are. You don't know. Like, new is like Migos or Lil Yachty or Lil Baby or Da Baby, which are two different people. Like,
those are two different people.
I only know this because I work with children and young adults, so I have to know a little bit about the music that comes out. Some of it I'm like, what is this?
I like Kendrick Lamar.
Crap?
Is he new? He's
not really considered new either.
Oh.
He's got 3 projects at this point, along with a variety of mixtapes. So good, easy to like. I mean, these are all good tastes, but I'm saying don't call it. You don't know me. Just accept your age, ma'am.
Our age?
Your age.
Because you're older.
Accept your age, and you're not into the new musics.
I'm not.
Some
into
of it
the
you
new.
like. Your love of ratchet music will allow you to enjoy some radio hits.
Well, and I think the thing about it is, I always listen to what I know, right? So I don't want to listen to the radio because
it's none of the music you know anymore.
It's none of the music
passed you by.
It is absolutely passed me by.
Just
which
like
is perfectly,
me and the Hot Boys. It was like music's gonna just pass me by.
It's gonna be fine.
Okay. And I'm gonna just stay with these records that I like.
I mean, it is. I would have to trip up on new music. That would be, and so maybe with
particularly a full album, because it's really hard to get into a full album.
It absolutely
there's actually a whole like theory in research where it's like there's a certain point where we get set in stone when it comes to our musical tastes.
That's right.
And it's just harder. One, because there's so much content out there, but it's just harder to like new things the older you get, because it's like, man, this stuff doesn't resonate with me the same, and I'm also not as emotionally open to accept it.
Right, because you're 17, 18, 19, 20. Like those songs like imprint on you in a way.
In a time where you were so emotionally you're trying to sort of learn the world and understand.
Do you remember the albums that you listened to when you broke up with somebody?
Oh my God, yes.
Like that's
Lauryn Hill's album.
Mary J. Blige,
Lauryn Hill's album still gives me some, oh my God. I loved you, now I don't.
Now I don't?
Now I don't.
Wow. I used to.
Love him. Like I can still like, oh my God, I remember driving my car crying. He gonna cry in the car.
He gonna cry. Yeah, he gonna cry in the car. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So it's like I remember some back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, Shy, back in the day, Shy.
Oh.
Yeah. Some.
I actually liked their music.
Yeah, Shy was a good to like, but also if you were going through a breakup.
They were, you know what? Shy wasn't breakup music for me. I had a big crush on one of the guys in there too. But they were.
They got some breakup songs.
They do have some breakup songs, but they had just love songs too, and they're in the vein of Boys and Boys to Men and
Boys. Oh my God, Boys to Men breakup songs.
Woo.
Boy.
Well, I mean, Boys to Men will have you crying about your mama, your boyfriend, that mama. That's
mama.
Listen,
you know I love you.
You know I love you. I'm gonna give a clip right now because I love my mama. Right. I love your mama. But I mean, so for us, this music like has additional
impact.
Meaning. Yeah. And so, for the kids that are listening, I don't mean to call you guys kids or younger folks.
They're children.
Kids, younger folks, they're gonna
nothing, run around snot-nosed little brats. These horny texters, they don't know what they're talking about.
I do hear myself saying that to the kids. Like, I put that Outkast album on yesterday. Like, now this here is rap.
That's where you are now.
This is rap. And so I had this, conversation with Daniel yesterday about it. And I'm listening to Outkast and I know all the words because it's Outkast.
Right.
And Daniel's like, what are you even saying? And I said, I'm listening to the best rap ever. It's called Outkast. He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, that's because the songs you listen to are these whiny singers that ain't really rapping, but they not really singing. I'm like, and he's
that's
like,
how old you are. You're just dissing his music.
I am. And don't get me wrong. I listened to that song when it came out and now I'm over it. He's like, I don't even sing that anymore.
Right.
So I'm even behind on that.
We had this whole conversation about him and Old Town Road. He was like, I never really liked Old Town Road, but the kids seemed to make fun of you when you didn't like it. So now I don't. Because we were talking about what's classic music. So I'm sitting with the kids driving home from our mom's and we're talking about what's classic music. And he's like, well, what makes the thing a classic? I was a classic is if it lasts forever.
Yep.
And he's like, Old Town Road may be kind of a classic. He's like, but I didn't like it at first, but then the kids at school made fun of you for not liking it, and now none of them like it. So we ended up having this longer conversation about like, okay, so music moves sort of in phases, and there are people who want to be into everything new and fresh, and they just leave things behind. But if you find something you like, it's okay to keep liking it. And so I was like, so for you, is Old Town Road a classic? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, you just said it was a classic, but now, you know.
It's interesting that you said that, because he said the same thing. He said, I don't even sing that song anymore.
Right.
And I said, well, what do you listen to now? He was like, whatever my friends like. Right. So Daniel's going to be the one that we're going to have to be like, what do you specifically like? Right, and it is okay for you to like it and for your friends not to like it.
Right. To help him sort of develop his own identity.
The opposite is like, Ra, you might want to look to see.
You might want to see what other people are into.
Other people are into. You might also
read the
like
room,
it.
my friend.
Please.
Yeah. Just learn, accept new things. Be flexible to newness.
Be flexible to new things.
Whereas
and for Daniel, figure out what you like specifically for you.
Right.
And Victoria's just a whole nother.
Yep.
You know.
Ball of wax.
Ball of wax, indeed.
Yeah.
She likes a little bit of everything, though.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as
she loves just some Disney.
She does. And I mean, she likes a little bit of, like, she was jamming to the Sunday service choir.
Nice.
Okay. She's like,
well, you liked it. You're her best friend. So.
And there you go. Y'all, every time Victoria, she follows me around the house. She tells me everything that is on her mind all around the house. And the whole time, Richie is in the background singing, let me tell you about my best friend. He's rude. He's rude. Because she's not following him around telling her every single thought.
She is not. She comes to me sometimes when she kind of needs an alternative perspective, but otherwise she is like attached to her. And I'm like,
you're so rude.
Yeah, glad it's not me. Can't be me though.
No, not me.
Right. All right, we've come around the bend on an hour, and we've gone a little bit over, as we always do.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Right. Thank you for joining us.
We had a great time.
Always.
You know what the music means.
You know what the music means.
I said, have a good day, sir.
I say good day. The Hallspace podcast is brought to you by Hall Productions, LLC. Show notes and credits can be found at our webpage, thehallspacepodcast.wordpress.com. Any questions, comments, or concerns can be sent to us at thehallspacepodcast@gmail.com. The show is written by Dagger Penn Davis. Music is curated by DJ Cabal. The show is produced by Chuck Jones and recorded at Slash and Trash Studios. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a good week. You always forget your cues.
I do. Well, I was trying to think of, I was gonna say, I was supposed to remind you about the song.
What song?
The words. There's words to the song.
I'm confused. Oh yeah, we were supposed to talk about that. We still got time to.
Okay. All right.
Cover that.
That's what I was trying to think of. I always forget my cue. I'm sorry, my bad. I am gonna have to write a note card about that.
House Hall. We rise brilliantly.